Today we're going to talk about the end of World War One. So this is going to have major impact on the start of World War Two and the causes of it, especially the treaty that's going to end the war. It's known as the Treaty of Versailles, and it is definitely going to be a quote-unquote uneasy peace, which is obviously going to be a big reason why we're going to have a World War Two. So let's get this started. So, the last year of the war. So, during 1917, the Allies had been defeated on the Western Front, and Russia had actually withdrawn from the war in the Russian, because they're fighting the Russian Revolution. The Russian Revolution, FYI, was where they moved from a monarchy into a communist country, and they will eventually become the Soviet Union as a result of that. But the Germans, wanting to just annihilate the Allies, decided they're going to put all their eggs in one basket. They're going to launch a major offensive, and once again, they're going to get within 50 miles of Paris, but they're going to be stopped at the Second Battle of the Marne. And so by 1918, it was clear that the Germans were actually going to lose. So in 1917, looked really positive for the Germans. By 1918, because of this major loss at the Second Battle of the Marne, they are very clearly going to lose. And to make matters worse for the Germans, the Americans had joined in and the Allies continued to advance. So once it's very clear that the Allies are going to win, they got to start thinking about negotiating a peace. Okay, so the Allies had decided that they didn't want to negotiate with the Emperor Wilhelm or William. Wilhelm is the German. Anyway, their Emperor William II. So the angry Germans are going to revolt against him, and they're going to set up their own councils, and it's going to be those councils that the Allies are going to negotiate with, and Wilhelm is going to flee the country. So the German Socialist Democratic Party is going to declare Germany would become a democratic republic. So on November 11th, 1918, Germany signs an armistice. We're getting ready to celebrate this. Okay, this is coming up. We celebrate this every year as Veterans Day. It used to be known as Armistice Day. Okay, so an armistice is a ceasefire. Okay, and so this is going to end the war. It's going to be signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. And in December of 1918, the radicals are going to set up the German Communist Party and try to take over the government, but they're going to fail. So a lot of Germans, as a result, are really going to fear communism, and that's going to play a part in World War II as well. So the Austro-Hungarian Empire is going to be broken apart. It's going to be disintegrated into the independent nations of Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. So remember, we talked about how Serbia wanted a single Slavic nation, and that's what they're getting with Yugoslavia. And so national rivalries, however, will weaken Eastern Europe for many years to come, because there's going to be a lot of different, there's not one type of Slavic person. So they don't all necessarily get along. And so combining them together is actually a really terrible idea. Okay. So January 1919, representatives are going to meet in Paris to make the final settlement of the war. It's going to be known as the Treaty of Versailles. It's called that because they stayed in the Palace of Versailles, and that's where they negotiated the treaty. So Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. president, outlined what he called his 14 points. And these were 14 things that he thought would provide a lasting peace. So included in this would be things like open treaty negotiations, reducing military strength. But the 14th point, and the most important to him, was the League of Nations. That's why it's big and italicized and bolded there. Definitely need to know about the League of Nations. This is a precursor to what we have today is the United Nations. Okay, this is a peacekeeping organization. And basically, it was designed to be just like the UN, where instead of countries going and just going to war and deciding, having wars, and whoever wins the war wins the argument, they're going to start to have the argument in the League of Nations, and then they could settle that. Okay, the League of Nations could settle the argument, and then there wouldn't have to be a war. However, the conference is going to be met with many difficulties. Okay, so one of the big things is secret treaties. So there's different territory that's going to be outlined that was given to certain nations. So, like, excuse me, when Russia exited the war, they gave a whole bunch of land to Germany in exchange for calling off the war. In addition, Britain and France wanted Germany to pay for the war. Okay, this is going to be known as reparations. Go ahead and highlight that word too. That probably should be bolded because that's going to come up more and more as well. But they also wanted Germany stripped of all their weapons. So they really wanted to punish Germany for the war. They feel like Austria-Hungary is being punished already because they're getting broken up. So there's not as, like, it's kind of like they don't, it's hard to punish all of them since it's all broken up, or just punish Austria, or just punish Hungary, since it was one big empire. So Germany is really who they go after. And the reason for that is because Germany was kind of the big power behind the Central Powers, because they were the ones with the big army. They were the ones who the Allies were really fighting for all those years. Austria-Hungary was just kind of there. Okay, so the big three being the U.S., Great Britain, and France, are going to have to compromise because the U.S. really wanted to show mercy to Germany, and they wanted to, kind of like with Lincoln, when we talked about Lincoln and Reconstruction, they felt like a more merciful approach to bringing Germany back was better than punishing them. So Britain and France, however, who are right by Germany, France in particular shares a border with them, they say no, we want to punish them because we don't want them to ever think of doing this again. So out of this compromise, U.S. will get the League of Nations, but we actually don't join. So Wilson really pushed for us to join, but the Senate would never ratify it, and so we didn't ever join it. So because we don't join it, and it was our idea, it has very little power. Okay, and so that's going to be very important once again when we talk about World War II. So the Senate's big hangup was that they didn't want us to get pulled into a war by being part of the League of Nations, kind of like the system of alliances worked in World War I. So if, for example, Britain goes to war, it wouldn't automatically make us have to go to war. Okay, so this goes against. This goes against the ideas of ourselves being able to decide for ourselves, okay? And then, so the U.S., we're going to have to agree to territorial settlements that go against self-determination. So that's the idea that the people of a certain territory can choose their own government. Now, the French are going to have to give up the Rhineland. I'm going to show you in just a second a map that shows this. This is going to serve as a buffer between them and Germany. And in exchange for giving up the Rhineland, they're going to accept a defensive alliance with Britain and the U.S. instead. So, the Treaty of Versailles actually is going to be 5 separate treaties. So, it's a treaty with Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Okay, newly found Turkey. We'll talk about them in a minute. So, the Germans are going to be declared guilty for the war and forced to pay reparations. These reparations are going to drastically impact their economy, especially when we get into the 1930s when the Great Depression hits. They are hit, like we were hit hard in the U.S., but the Germans are going to be hit way harder. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that a German mark, which was basically their dollar, it was literally worth more as toilet paper than it was to use as actual money. So that goes to show you how bad it was in Germany. So they were forced to reduce their military force. They had to give back Alsace and Lorraine to France. And then these are territories I'm going to show you on this map in here in just a second. And then sections of eastern Germany will become a Polish state. Land on both sides of the Rhine River is going to become a demilitarized zone in addition to this, okay? So I'm going to show you here a map. So it's just that map that was on the last one. It's just bigger so you can see it. So Alsace and Lorraine, that's this territory here, okay? That's given to France. And then this land here, all of this is going to be given to Poland, okay? And then this land, this is the Rhineland. So you see the Rhine River, that's what it's named after. This becomes a demilitarized zone. So this means no military on either side, no soldiers, no weapons are allowed in this area at all. Okay, and so that's kind of how that worked. Okay. So Eastern Europe is going to greatly change. So, like I said, the Russians and the Germans are both going to lose land. So the land that went to Russia gave Germany a bunch of land. Well, obviously Germany is not going to get to keep that since they lost the war. So we're going to see new nations of Finland. Okay, Finland's up here, Latvia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and then Poland, okay, is going to be a new nation. Czechoslovakia, that's this right here. Austria is going to be a new nation, and then Hungary. And then Romania is going to get land from Russia. Okay, so Romania is going to grow. And then they're going to get land from Russia, Hungary, and Bulgaria. And then Yugoslavia is going to be formed here. And that includes the Serbs, the Croats, and the Slovens. And we're going to talk about those. That's going to be a big issue again as we go through basically the entire 20th century. Okay, so I'm going to show you this map here, but bigger so it's easier to see. So you can see, once again, new land. So all this here, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, all of this here was given to Germany from the Russians. And so as a result of that, they don't get to keep it. So, excuse me, these countries become new nations. Okay, Romania is going to get some land from Hungary, some land from Russia, some land from Bulgaria. They're going to grow in size. Czechoslovakia is going to be created. This was part of Austria-Hungary. Austria and Hungary are going to be created, and then there's Yugoslavia right there. Okay, so this is the Slavic nation that Serbia wanted. Terrible idea. Okay, notice here, this is Turkey here. This used to be the Ottoman Empire, and we're going to talk about them here on the next slide. Okay, so the Ottoman Empire is going to get broken up. So France and Great Britain are going to take over Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Palestine, okay, which is present-day Israel. Israel doesn't exist until after World War II. Okay, but these lands, so this is this area here. So Syria, there's Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and there's Palestine. Okay, so this area here, these are all going to be known as mandates. A mandate is a country that is controlled by another country, so Britain or France, on behalf of the League of Nations. Now, Britain and France do not own these territories, but they do control them. Okay, and this is going to be a big issue here because this is going to lead to infighting between a lot of different people, and eventually it's going to lead to the rise of terror groups and then 9/11, and there's a whole system of events that happen that kind of starts with the end of World War I with this mandate system. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. Don't forget to do your processor, and have a wonderful day.